get organised.
I'm really pleased to introduce our next speaker, Ekua Bayunu, who's from Labour Black Socialists. She's got a number of roles. She's also Vice Chair of the National Women's Committee, National Equalities Officer for the Socialist Health Association, and a City Councillor in Manchester. I know she's got other roles as well, which I'm sure she'll be talking about shortly, and she's going to address us about how we need to be unified against racism and discrimination. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth, and thank you everyone who's here and also everyone who's watching and contributing on the chat. I will be a bit slow on picking up, I've picked up a few things and I hope I can address them. Yeah, I sort of wouldn't trust me actually with that array of roles that Ruth just introduced me with, because I wonder sometimes about people accumulating that, but I guess I want to, the other side of that is I'm also a community activist, have been all my life. I'm an artist and a grandmother, and I bring that to my experience as an activist. I'm here as the spokesperson for Labour Black Socialists primarily, and I'm going to come on to speaking about why there is a need for Black self-organising within the struggle that we are talking about and we're bringing today. I also, I guess, before I start, because I'm really trying to focus on who I'm talking to, who we're talking to, who we're trying to engage in. So earlier, I think, Ruth, you spoke unusually about an emotion, and that was anger. And I just wanted to acknowledge all the emotions that we are all speaking at every level within the struggle. I want to speak on the despair and the sadness, the anger, the fear, and what we're about to acknowledge them and to bring them into the struggle, to harness their power. They're not things we should run from or be scared of. They're things that have a power and an energy of their own. And I say that because I was feeling very overwhelmed with despair coming into this. And I'll dig into that, and I've tried to channel that into an energy that I can bring to this debate and I can bring on behalf of Labour Black Socialists. But if you're sitting in there and you're shaking your head and you're not feeling like this is going to move us anywhere, bear with us, acknowledge that emotion and bring it to bear. Labour Black Socialists welcome this initiative as a whole, and we support the manifesto. We understand and support the steps we are finally taking to acknowledge and work with the strengths of being a mass movement. We feel that this Labour Left4Socialism is the first really organised step in actually harnessing that, rather than just focusing on the leadership and the structures that we know are so corrupt within our party. This manifesto gives us all the opportunity to be able to clearly articulate exactly what we stand for as the Labour Party. It's been a long time coming, and it's been frustrating to experience the time that's been taken up by expecting to get answers to come from the leadership of this party. Of course, we appreciate and recognise the efforts made by individual socialists within the parliamentary party and other power structures such as the NEC and the newly formed NWC, yet to see. Our hope is the new equality structures will focus more on supporting these new initiatives. Labour Black Socialists has taken an active role in shaping the manifesto as a whole. But today, as Ruth said, I've been asked to speak specifically and directly to the section on racism. I'm hoping that you all will have seen the manifesto. There was a bit of me that was trying to pray-see it, and I'm not sure that that's actually possible. So I'm going to start and finish. So what we all need to acknowledge, and what this manifesto acknowledges, is that the Tories' intent, aided by the right-wing media, is to normalise a racist society. What we need to do, and I'm going to drop to the end, Labour must commit to promoting an agenda of equality and respect by campaigning to ensure a diverse selection of candidates is supported into leadership positions, and I think this is even more importantly, by improving our understanding of class, race, gender, disability, and LGBTQ issues in our socialist practice and in confronting racism in the party, as well as wider society. specifically including anti-Black racism. So that was just the, I top and tailed that because I'm sure that's just to drive you to go and read it for yourselves. So I am going to, as I said, refer to the role of Black self-organization, but I'm also going to speak to the emotion that I spoke to. And one of the reasons that I came to this was I was really worried that this was the moment that most people was going to use to go and make a cup of tea, go to the loo and get themselves comfortable, safe in the feeling that they already know what racism is, they already know what anti-racism is, and are very sure that they know how to fight it. And if that is you, I would really encourage you to stay with me right now. Get your cup of tea a bit later and acknowledge that we are all part of this struggle, and we need to take it on board as individuals. Now, being part of Labour Black Socialists brings me the benefit that I stand here obviously with the lived experience as an older Black woman, and there are young people as well I know whose voices need to be heard on these platforms. But as an older Black woman, I have a lived experience that I'm bringing, but I also bring it with the lived experience of other Black socialists to this debate. And why am I saying that? I suppose one of the things that I benefit is from one of my comrades in Labour Black Socialists, which many of you may have heard or seen, Rizwan Krayastan. And when I was preparing this, he said to me, he quoted Socrates, and then did point out to me the flatness of his nose, because I was a bit like, why are we talking about Greece and blah, blah. But he says, Socrates says, the unexamined life is not worth living. But Malcolm X then went on to say, the examined life is painful and difficult. And I think it's that painfulness and difficulty that sometimes we shy away from when we look at what are the conditions that we're looking at in terms of fighting racism. Racism in society, racism in the media, racism definitely in the Tory government, but racism in our own party. I'm taking deep breaths to keep me through this. I call on your patience. And also my low, so I guess I'm also really aware of the barriers that many may be experiencing actually joining us, and how important it is for us to look at how we can address those barriers. So, you know, there may be technological barriers because the poverty means people don't have the equipment to be able to sign into webinars or YouTubes. People are probably working double shifts, so they're at work and they're not going to be able to engage. They maybe just have received or living through unemployment extended for the last week, for the last month, for the last years. We talk about those issues, and we need to also make sure that we stand on platforms with people who are having that as a lived experience. And that's what I'm trying to focus on and do today. When it comes to looking at racism, there are a list, and sometimes I wonder about going through that list of inequalities with you. We know that inequalities exist in housing. We know they exist in health, in education, in the justice system. And I could go list the detail, and part of me really wants to, but I'm also reminded of my own childhood in a small working class, former boot and shoe town in the sort of East Midlands. Used to be on the A6, they've taken it on the A6. And as a child who was raised in a white family, I often experienced quite extreme racism, would go home having been chased, having been beaten, having been spat on. And I often did not take that to my family, my white family, because I didn't understand the value of bringing those experiences to bear. That's what I've always thought. But now one of the things I realized that I was also protecting myself from their failure to understand, to actually appreciate what it means to have the lived experience of racism, what it means in terms, and I'm raising that because it's really vital if when we look at how we're going to move forward, that we're not doing this as a case of we stand on that platform for the most oppressed because we're kind or we're philanthropic. We're doing that because we need to find ways that the most oppressed can join us and are part of the struggle, that we actually represent them, that we are them. So if you see what I mean, that I've been challenged that, you know, what are you doing for the working class? What are you doing for the most? And we're not here to do anything for them. We're here to be joined in solidarity. We are them, and we should always be them. So when we reveal figures, like we're coming to the end, this is the last day of the Black Maternity Health Week. And so when we talk about figures that Black women are 4 times more likely to die in childbirth, I feel that. My daughter gave birth to her first baby during the pandemic. The fact that that put her at such risk is visceral. And how do I share that with you? The fact that the solution they're looking to bring to that is to make it almost mandatory for Black women to be induced at 8 months, and the damage that could do to their bodies, and then the damage it could do to the young infants who are then trying to be nourished and cared for by women who are in severe pain and may well not be able to go on to be able to have more children. It's a form of underhand sterilization, racial sterilization, as far as I'm concerned. But what's the point of me sharing that information with you, with all of you, and talking about this if we can't feel it, if we can't think, how does that impact on our comrades? How do we actually make sure that we can have people like me and others standing on these platforms and talking to those issues out of that lived experience? Yes, I have a drink. Sorry, I'm just going through my notes and making sure. So I've listed those, or I haven't listed the inequalities. I've left you to go and research the inequalities for yourselves, actually. And I've spoken about a little of them in terms of really understanding and how do we work with that. And one of the most important things, I think, is for us to understand that racism equals prejudice plus power. So often it is misunderstood and pushed as any form of prejudice that is used between people or between institutions and people, but it's not. It's about when that prejudice creates power. When there's power, when power means that prejudice can move actions. When it's power that can lessen our access to decent housing. When it's power that can stop us getting jobs. But the other thing that I really wanted to talk about, so we bear that in mind, how does this impact on class solidarity? Because quite often, and I find it within this manifesto, it's like if there's a separation between the class solidarity that we want to talk about, between the workers' rights and racism and how it impacts. We are all aware, I am sure, that there are 14.4 million poor people in the UK, 4 million of whom are children. 50% of Black households with one working adult are counted within that 14.4 million poor people, experiencing extreme poverty. If we get to grips with dealing with the issues and facing those people, everyone benefits. We have this in this manifesto, I hope and I believe, because tackling racism makes the changes that are needed to tackle oppression for all people. If we can liberate Black people from the oppression of the poverty that they're facing in this country, and we recognize and bring them into the struggle, all people, in fact, the numbers are more white people will gain from us tackling racism than Black people will. And I really want to ram that home in a way, but in the most loving way possible, if I can. I'm going to actually stop it there. There's so much that I could go on about, but I would rather answer questions. Thank you.
Ekua, I think I can confidently say that I speak for everybody whenever I say that that was emotional and absolutely brilliant, and reflects exactly why the fight against racism is such a central part of the LabourLeft4Socialism manifesto. It was an outstanding contribution, Ekua, and we could all feel your emotion and the difficulties in respect of giving the contribution, and we thank you very much for it. Ekua, I just have a couple of questions, and I'm sure that Ruth will have some questions as well. You referenced at the start anger as an emotion, and you know, it's very much part of socialism, anger, in order to try and achieve a better society. But I wonder if you could, I don't want to put you in a difficult position, but I wonder if you could talk for a second about, because we do reference specifically that Labour is failing in its challenge to expose racism within society. And I wonder if you could talk for a second in respect of what do you think Labour should be doing right here and now to expose the endemic institutional racism that we are all seeing becoming the norm in society?
So sometimes I find it really difficult to answer the question when people say what Labour should do, because I think in some ways what I feel, I want to talk about what the Labour Party that we're building, the Labour Party that we belong to, should do. And I think at the absolute core of that are two main principles. And the first is about education. It's about political education. It's about understanding the impact. What does it mean when we talk about the impact of oppression? What does that mean in terms of the people that we're working alongside? So we need, I think that what we need to do is to do a form of political education that actually brings the lived experience of people suffering oppression based on their class, based on their race, based on their gender, based on their sexual persuasion, based on their disability. Bring that into the room and bring that with patience, but with information in terms of what do we learn? What are the lessons? It's not just about going there, that's terrible, we're going to fight for you. But what are the strengths that come out from, this is why I call it political education. What are the strengths that come from the lived experience of learning how to live with that level of experience, that level of oppression? So let's look at what successes we can see in a variety of movements, both within this country and internationally, where people have struggled through that lived experience. So I've spoken before about, let's look at the model in terms of the liberation struggle in countries that have experienced colonialism. Let's look at who they centered within that. So I know, for example, within the African liberation struggle, they centered women's leadership. And that's really important, women's voice within this. Women, because their relationship with family, their relationship with the workforce, and I think it's something that we are really beginning to do. So I think that the most important, that's one of the most important things that we can do. And then to ensure that, I would say the second, and I didn't actually get to speak on it more, was why Black self-organization. So it's about what tends to happen, and one of the tools I think that the right does, is that they will find ways of putting people in power who are, we individualize the Black experience. So a single Black person is expected to speak on behalf, and I don't know if everybody is aware that I use Black to mean all people who come from communities who've been impacted by imperialism and racism, just so I'm clear. So African heritage, South Asian, and it goes in. And then some of the work we do also, we recognize that the oppression we face also is faced by the Gypsy, Roma, traveler communities and others. But, oh God, to keep my thread on that. So to look at what do we bring? So things like our resilience, the fact that there is even just one Black person in this party still, and when people are leaving, I just think, I can't change the reality. That we need to work out how do we have solidarity with people who can't walk away from their lived reality. Whatever I do, whenever I step out this door, I will always be a Black woman. But with Black self-organization, what it gives us an opportunity to do is to bring our experience together, to be able to talk about that without having to constantly say, yes, this is racism. Yes, that's oppressive. And then we can support relationships with individuals who are engaged in Black self-organization, I think is key to that as well. So those are the two points. And obviously, and therefore support individuals into positions of power who have that Black self-organization behind them, not just because they're an individual. So I, quote all the facts about me being a councillor and being on the Socialist Health Association and etc. But actually, no, the important reason I'm here is because I'm a member of Labour Black Socialists.
Ekua, thank you. And I'm going to ask everybody to please, who's watching, please bear with us. This is the launch of a manifesto. The in-depth nature of this is because these are the platforms upon which we will stand going forward in order to show the resilience that Ekua has just mentioned. And Ekua, that resilience that you talk about, I think everyone in the Labour Party who is a socialist at the moment feels that it's this balance between tiredness and resilience and a determination to show that you will stand for socialism no matter what. And I saw in the chat people referencing everyone who at the moment is being challenged by the apparatchik of the Labour Party and showing solidarity to all who are suspended and all who are expelled. And I know that you would feel exactly the same. And Ekua, I just want to finish with one last quick question. You referenced the issue of class within struggle and the importance of socialism and class. Just if you could just for a second reference that as to whether or not you think that really you can fight anti-racism without being a socialist and without dealing with the class struggle that exists in society.
Absolutely not. And I think it's a two-way thing, Howard. I think we cannot. I mean, I think that was one of the things I was trying to reference, that actually one of the most effective ways for us to seek class solidarity is through fighting racism. I think that they're totally, they cannot be separated. My lesson in joining the Labour Party is the fact that people do, that they separate. So, they've separated so much out of an interpretation of socialism. So for me, I came into this party knowing that you have to look at an analysis, class, race, gender, and then the subsections, the intersections around that, around disability, sexuality. We cannot have class solidarity without fighting and tackling racism. They're interchangeable. And also, I suppose it's that lesson that that mantra that we all have, that you fight with the most oppressed and within every subsection. So yes, Labour Black Socialists absolutely acknowledges class struggle that is central to our struggle. But within that, there are intersections of additional oppression that we all need to also acknowledge, because we will all benefit from it if we do. We know that. The reason that we put class at the front is because people experiencing poverty, people experiencing discrimination, all those things, housing, education, that happens on a class basis, as well as a race basis, as well as a gender basis. So, yeah.
Ekua, thank you very much. An outstanding contribution. And for anyone who felt that what we were trying to organise today was just simply a reaction to our treatment within Labour, I think you just put that to the sword with your contribution, that now people can firmly see that we are presenting a manifesto for socialism within the Labour Party, and central to it is our fight against all forms of racism and discrimination. So thank you, Ekua, absolutely outstanding.
Get organised.